Hello, I'm Russell. I'm 23, pretty straightforward, a bit impulsive, and usually just go with the flow. I don't overthink things, or at least I try not to. Life's simpler that way, or at least it was until recently. It was just one of those lazy, easygoing Saturdays where time felt like it slowed down just a little. I was hanging around my apartment, aimlessly scrolling through my phone, when I noticed I'd missed a call from Liam. We've been best friends since middle school, and he's one of those guys who always leaves something behind: keys, wallet, headphones, you name it. Sure enough, he'd forgotten his headphones at my place the night before. No big deal. I shot him a quick text, grabbed the headphones off the table, and headed over to his house. It wasn't far, just a quick drive across town. I'd been there countless times. It was practically my second home. Liam's mom, Charlotte, was usually around, but we'd never interacted much beyond casual greetings. To me, she'd always just been Liam's mom, pleasant, polite, but distant. When I pulled into their driveway, everything felt familiar and normal, just another ordinary visit. I didn't expect anything out of the ordinary. I certainly didn't expect the image that would stick with me from that day forward. I knocked lightly on the door, assuming Liam would answer, and we'd joke about how forgetful he was. But when the door opened, it wasn't Liam. It was Charlotte. She stood there, wrapped only in a towel, clearly fresh out of the shower, her hair still damp and cascading softly over her bare shoulders. Her eyes widened in surprise when she saw me, but there was no embarrassment. She just smiled, natural and warm. "Hey, Russell," she said, her voice calm despite the unusual circumstance. "Liam stepped out for a bit. What brings you here?" I stood frozen for a second, completely caught off guard. My eyes instinctively darted away, a blush creeping up my neck. "Oh, I stammered, holding out the headphones awkwardly, like some kind of peace offering. "Liam left these at my place. I didn't realize you were, busy." Charlotte laughed softly, a rich, genuine sound that eased the tension in the air just slightly. She brushed a loose strand of wet hair behind her ear, unfazed by my obvious discomfort. "Oh, I'm not busy," she said lightly. "Just finished showering, that's all. Do you want to come in for a bit?" I hesitated, my rational mind telling me to politely decline and leave. But my impulsive side, the part of me that often ignored logic and reason, was intrigued. Charlotte wasn't a stranger, but suddenly she didn't feel like Liam's mom either. She seemed different somehow, more real, more human. My curiosity got the better of me. "Yeah, sure," I found myself saying, stepping into the house. Immediately, everything felt different. The air was charged with something I couldn't place, something that made my heart beat a little faster. Charlotte led me into the living room, pulling her towel a little tighter around herself, though her movements were so casual and confident that she hardly seemed bothered by the intimacy of the situation. She gestured to the couch. "Sit down. I'll grab you a drink." "Soda okay?" "Yeah, soda's good," I replied, settling awkwardly onto the couch, my mind racing as I tried not to watch her move toward the kitchen. But I couldn't help but notice how graceful she was, how naturally she carried herself, even in such an unusual situation. She returned quickly with a drink in hand, settling onto the opposite end of the couch. The silence hung between us for a second, thick and palpable. I struggled to find words, unsure of how to break through the sudden tension. Thankfully, Charlotte broke the silence first, her voice gentle, almost soothing. "You know, Russell, it's funny. I still vividly remember you and Liam running wild around the house when you were kids. It's hard to believe how grown up you both are now." I nodded, a bit relieved by the conversation starter. "Yeah, time flies. Sometimes I still feel like I'm just a kid, not ready to handle real adult life yet." She laughed softly again, eyes warm and understanding. "Trust me, it never fully feels like you're ready. You just get better at pretending." Something about her honesty caught me off guard, made me really look at her for the first time, not just as Liam's mother, but as a woman who had her own thoughts, fears, and dreams. Her expression was open, vulnerable in a way I'd never expected. And in that moment, I felt something shift inside me. I studied her face, taking in the softness of her features, the way her eyes held a quiet strength behind their warmth. She was genuinely beautiful, not just physically, but in a way that felt real, unfiltered. I'd never noticed it before, and now it felt impossible to ignore. "Thank you for stopping by today," she said softly, breaking my reverie. "Honestly, I needed someone to talk to." I smiled, trying to hide the swirl of emotions suddenly gripping me. "Anytime, Charlotte. Seriously. When it was finally time for me to leave, Charlotte walked me to the door. As I stepped onto the porch, she reached out and touched my arm gently. Her fingers lingered for just a moment longer than necessary, sending a subtle shiver down my spine. "Take care, Russell," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You too," I managed, turning to walk back to my car, but my thoughts remained anchored in that living room with Charlotte wrapped only in a towel, revealing a vulnerability I'd never seen before. As I drove away, the reality of what just happened settled heavily in my chest. I tried to convince myself it was just an innocent moment, an awkward encounter that meant nothing. But deep down, I knew better. Something had changed, a subtle shift that altered the way I saw her forever. That night, I couldn't get Charlotte out of my mind. No matter how hard I tried, every thought circled back to her. The ease of her laughter, the warmth of her gaze, and the delicate scent of her perfume that lingered in my memory. The idea that I'd crossed some invisible boundary lingered in the back of my mind, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something undeniably compelling about Charlotte, something I'd never felt before. I lay awake for hours staring at the ceiling, replaying the scene at her door again and again. I knew then that my simple, uncomplicated life was about to become anything but, and somehow I couldn't bring myself to regret it. A few days had passed since the afternoon at Liam's house, but Charlotte hadn't left my mind for a moment. Every idle thought led back to her, to the warmth of her laughter, the scent of her hair, the gentle touch of her fingers on my arm. I told myself it was a passing crush, a meaningless infatuation brought on by the surprise of seeing her that way. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. After a long, uneventful day at work, I stopped by the grocery store on my way home. It was crowded for a Wednesday evening with families and tired office workers wandering aimlessly down the aisles. I moved through the store mechanically, tossing a few basics into my cart: bread, eggs, and a couple of frozen dinners. I rounded the corner to the pasta aisle, distracted, and almost collided with someone. Instinctively, I reached out to steady her, my hands gently gripping her shoulders. "Oh, sorry about that," I said quickly, only to find myself looking directly into Charlotte's surprised eyes. She smiled warmly, a flicker of amusement crossing her face. "Russell, fancy running into you here." My heartbeat quickened slightly, but I managed a casual smile. "Hey, Charlotte. Didn't expect to see you here either." She laughed softly, brushing back a strand of hair. "Even moms have to eat, you know." Her eyes twinkled playfully. "What are you up to?" I shrugged lightly, gesturing at my half-empty cart. "Just grabbing a few essentials. Nothing exciting." Charlotte glanced into my cart, raising an eyebrow at the frozen dinners. "Looks like gourmet dining at its finest." I laughed awkwardly, suddenly aware of how pathetic my shopping choices seemed. "Yeah, cooking is not exactly my specialty." "Well," she said, her tone turning thoughtful, "Liam's staying over at a friend's house tonight. I was going to cook something anyway. Why don't you come over for dinner? It'll be better than anything frozen." I hesitated for only a split second. My rational side warned me to decline, to keep my distance, and forget about the strange moment we'd shared. But my impulsive side took control once again. Before I knew it, I was nodding. "Sure, that sounds great." Charlotte smiled brightly, a mixture of genuine delight and mild surprise. "Perfect. Say around 7. "7's good," I replied, feeling strangely exhilarated by my own decision. As I drove to her house that evening, my heart hammered relentlessly in my chest. I'd spent far too long staring at my wardrobe, finally settling on a casual shirt and jeans, hoping it struck the right balance between effortless and presentable. Pulling into the driveway, I took a deep breath, trying to steady the nervous energy fluttering in my stomach. Charlotte greeted me at the door, looking relaxed and effortlessly elegant in jeans and a simple blouse. She welcomed me inside with a genuine warmth that immediately put me at ease. The house smelled inviting, filled with the comforting aroma of roasting chicken and herbs. Charlotte guided me toward the kitchen, her movements confident and graceful. "Make yourself comfortable," she said warmly, turning back to stir a pan on the stove. I took a seat at the kitchen table, watching her work. There was a gentle rhythm to her movement, something soothing about the ease with which she navigated the kitchen. I felt a strange sense of peace just being near her. We talked effortlessly as she cooked, our conversation flowing naturally. We discussed trivial things: at first movies we'd seen, local news, and small-town gossip. But as the evening went on, the conversation gradually deepened. "You know," Charlotte began softly as she placed plates on the table, When I was younger, I had all these grand dreams and plans. Then life happened and I realized it's never quite what you expect. I nodded slowly, understanding her sentiment completely. Yeah, it feels like we spend most of our lives adjusting to changes we never asked for. She smiled gently, her eyes holding mine. Exactly. I guess I never anticipated feeling this alone. It's strange, isn't it, being surrounded by people yet feeling completely isolated. I studied her, carefully absorbing her honesty. I know exactly what you mean, I replied softly. It's like the older I get, the harder it is to find connections that feel real. Charlotte's eyes softened even further, a quiet sadness lingering behind her gentle gaze. That's exactly it. Real connections. They're so rare these days. Dinner continued like that, honest and thoughtful, punctuated by quiet laughter and comfortable silences. The meal itself was delicious, but it was the conversation that truly filled me. For the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely understood. Hours passed in what felt like minutes until finally it was time to leave. Charlotte walked me to the door, her steps slow as if prolonging the inevitable goodbye. When we reached the front porch, she turned to me, her expression thoughtful. "Thank you, Russell," she whispered softly. "For tonight, it means a lot to have someone listen." "Any time," I said sincerely, not wanting the moment to end, but unsure of what else to say. Charlotte stepped closer, closing the small gap between us. She wrapped her arms around me, gently pulling me into a hug. I hesitated briefly before wrapping my arms around her in return, holding her carefully, feeling the warmth of her body pressed against mine. The hug lingered much longer than an ordinary friendly hug should. Her breath was soft against my shoulder, her body relaxed and comforting. I closed my eyes, trying to imprint every sensation, every second of this unexpected intimacy into my memory. Finally, she pulled back slowly, her eyes meeting mine. There was a quiet intensity there, something that made my heart pound harder. "Good night, Russell," she murmured, softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Good night, Charlotte," I replied, my voice equally quiet, charged with a tenderness I hadn't anticipated. I walked back to my car, each step heavier than the last, as if pulling me away from something essential. I glanced back once, seeing Charlotte still standing on the porch watching me leave. A gentle smile crossed her lips before she turned back inside. As I drove home, my thoughts churned with confusion and longing. I knew without a doubt that we had crossed an invisible line tonight. The hug we shared had said more than any words could. Charlotte was no longer just Liam's mom, no longer simply a friend's parent. She was a woman who had opened herself up to me, revealing vulnerability beneath her composed exterior. And as the streetlights blurred by, I knew there was no going back. It was Friday night, and Liam suggested we hit our favorite bar to unwind after the long week. He was excited, his spirits high, talking about plans for the weekend. As we walked in, I nodded along, laughing at his jokes. But my mind was somewhere else, still lingering on that moment on Charlotte's porch. Her warmth pressed gently against me and the quiet words we'd shared. Inside, the bar was bustling. People were laughing, music was pulsing from the speakers, and the scent of beer and fried food filled the air. Liam quickly spotted a table near the corner, and we settled in comfortably, ordering our usual drinks. As we sat, talking about nothing in particular, my eyes scanned the room absent-mindedly. My breath caught abruptly when I spotted a familiar face across the bar. Charlotte sat at a high-top table surrounded by two friends I didn't recognize. She was laughing softly at something one of them said, her eyes bright, her smile genuine. The sight of her, so effortlessly beautiful and relaxed, hit me like a physical blow. Liam noticed my distracted gaze and turned to look. "Oh, wow, that's my mom," he said with a laugh. "Guess she's having a girls' night out." "Small world, huh?" I forced a casual smile, my heart thumping heavily in my chest. "Yeah, small world." He waved cheerfully at Charlotte, who turned in surprise and offered a quick wave back, her eyes instantly meeting mine. For a brief second, I saw surprise flash across her face before melting into a smile that made my pulse quicken uncontrollably. Liam excused himself to the bar to grab another round, leaving me alone at our table. I didn't intend to approach Charlotte, but my body seemed to move of its own accord, and before I knew it, I was standing beside her table. "Russell," Charlotte said warmly, clearly surprised but pleased to see me. Her friend smiled politely as she introduced me. Ladies, this is Russell, one of Liam's closest friends. I greeted them politely, exchanging small talk for a few moments before Charlotte glanced toward the empty stool beside her, her expression quietly inviting. Would you like to join us? She asked gently. Yeah, sure, I replied, taking the seat beside her, suddenly hyper-aware of how close we were. I could smell the delicate fragrance of her perfume, soft and intoxicating. It made me dizzy. We exchanged idle chat with her friends for a while, until gradually they returned to their own conversation, leaving Charlotte and me in our own little bubble. You look like you're enjoying yourself, I commented softly, taking a sip from my glass, trying to steady my nerves. Charlotte gave a gentle laugh, her eyes drifting thoughtfully over her friends. It's nice to get out every now and then, but honestly, it doesn't happen often. Most nights, I'm home alone, just me and my thoughts. I studied her carefully, hearing the quiet sadness beneath her casual tone. Does it bother you? I asked gently. Being alone, I mean. Charlotte's eyes met mine, searching them for a moment as if deciding how much to reveal. I didn't think it did, she admitted slowly. But lately I've realized just how lonely I actually am. I guess that's why I invited you over the other night. I needed company more than I realized. Her honesty struck me, deeply stirring something inside my chest. I leaned a bit closer, lowering my voice slightly. I'm glad you did. Honestly, I can't remember the last time I felt so connected to someone. Her eyes softened, vulnerability shining through. I feel the same, Russell. It scares me, but at the same time, it's the first real thing I've felt in a long time. My heartbeat quickened, every nerve in my body coming alive. Her words resonated, deeply mirroring my own complicated feelings. It was no longer just curiosity or a harmless crush. I was genuinely falling for Charlotte. And now in this noisy bar, surrounded by oblivious people, that realization felt like both a relief and a burden. Suddenly, Liam's voice interrupted from across the room. Russell, drinks are ready. I jumped, slightly pulled sharply back into reality. Charlotte gave me a reassuring smile, her eyes sparkling softly. You should get back, she said gently. Liam's probably wondering what happened to you. I nodded reluctantly, knowing she was right. Yeah, I better go. As I rose to leave, Charlotte reached out, touching my hand briefly under the table. Her fingers were warm and comforting. Thanks for coming over, she whispered, and thanks for tonight. Anytime, I replied softly, holding her gaze a second longer before reluctantly pulling away. Back at our table, Liam handed me my drink, oblivious to the storm of emotions churning within me. I forced a casual smile, trying to participate in our conversation, but my thoughts were completely occupied by Charlotte. Her gentle confession, the quiet vulnerability in her eyes, had ignited something inside me that refused to be ignored. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I stole glances at Charlotte whenever I thought Liam wasn't looking, each look making me crave her company more intensely. By the time we were ready to leave, I was emotionally drained, yet painfully aware of how deep the situation was becoming. Liam and I left the bar, stepping into the cool night air. He was laughing, talking about our plans for the weekend, but I could barely concentrate. My heart felt heavy, filled with both excitement and anxiety. As I drove home alone later that night, reality began to sink in. This wasn't just a harmless flirtation or a passing crush anymore. It had evolved into something more dangerous, something undeniably real. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, heart pounding, the road ahead dark and uncertain. Charlotte was Liam's mother. She was older, wiser, and a complicated figure in my life. Yet none of those reasons seemed enough to silence the feelings growing steadily inside me. I pulled into my driveway, turning off the engine, sitting in the silence of the night. My mind raced back to Charlotte's soft touch under the table, her gentle voice confessing loneliness, and the undeniable warmth I felt around her. I knew without any doubt that I was stepping into dangerous territory. But as my thoughts drifted back to Charlotte's smile, the warmth of her presence, I also realized another undeniable truth I didn't want to stop. Days blurred together after that night at the bar, but Charlotte never left my thoughts. Each quiet moment was filled with memories of our conversation, her gentle touch, and the honesty in her eyes. I tried to keep busy, telling myself it was just a fleeting attraction, but deep down I knew it was more serious than that. It was complicated, dangerous even, but undeniably real. One afternoon, Liam called to invite me over to his place for dinner. I hesitated for a moment thinking of Charlotte, but eventually agreed. Avoiding Liam wouldn't solve anything. Besides, maybe seeing Charlotte in a normal setting would help me regain perspective. When I arrived at their house, Liam greeted me enthusiastically, quickly pulling me into the kitchen, chatting about a new video game he'd just bought. Charlotte stood by the stove, her back turned toward us. Even without seeing her face, the sight of her was enough to make my pulse quicken. She turned around as we entered, her eyes widening briefly when they met mine, clearly caught off guard by my presence. She recovered quickly, offering a warm, casual smile. "Hey, Russell, good to see you." "You too," I said softly, carefully avoiding prolonged eye contact. I couldn't risk Liam noticing the tension between us. Dinner was comfortable enough, the conversation flowing easily. Charlotte participated lightly, focusing mostly on Liam and asking us questions about school sports and mutual friends. On the surface, everything appeared normal, but beneath the small talk, I sensed a quiet, hidden tension between Charlotte and me. Each accidental glance, each brief smile we exchanged carried an unspoken weight. After dinner, Liam suggested heading to the basement to play video games. I was about to follow him when Charlotte's voice stopped me gently. "Russell, could you help me clear up quickly? It'll only take a minute." My heart skipped, but I nodded calmly. "Sure thing." Liam shrugged and headed downstairs alone. Once the basement door closed behind him, silence settled between Charlotte and me. I moved awkwardly around the table, gathering dishes, hyper-aware of every sound, every subtle movement she made. Finally, Charlotte spoke, her voice soft and careful. "About the other night at the bar, I hope I didn't make things uncomfortable for you." "You didn't," I replied quickly, glancing at her. "Honestly, I appreciated your openness." She exhaled slowly, visibly relieved. "Good, because I meant every word. It's rare that I talk to someone and genuinely feel understood. With you, it's just easy." My chest tightened. "I feel the same. It's like I can say things around you I wouldn't usually share." She stepped closer, pausing just a few feet from me. The air thickened between us. "It scares me, Russell, but at the same time, it feels right. You understand me better than anyone has in a very long time." My breath caught in my throat. "Charlotte, I feel exactly the same way." She hesitated briefly before continuing, her voice nearly a whisper. "But you know this isn't simple, right? Liam is my son and your best friend. There's a lot at stake here." "I know," I replied quietly, my heart pounding heavily. "Believe me, I've been thinking about it nonstop, but I can't pretend these feelings aren't real." Charlotte's eyes searched mine for a long moment, vulnerable yet full of warmth. "I can't either." We stood there quietly, an unspoken truth hanging between us, too powerful to ignore but too complicated to act upon. Just then, Liam's voice echoed from downstairs. "Hey, Russell, you coming or what?" I glanced reluctantly toward the basement door, then back at Charlotte. She offered a gentle, reassuring smile. "Go ahead, we'll talk later." I nodded, heart still racing, and went downstairs. The rest of the evening passed in a haze. I played games mechanically, my mind constantly wandering back to Charlotte, to our quiet admission, and the way my heart had raced when she stood close to me. Later that night, after Liam had fallen asleep on the couch, I quietly gathered my things and slipped out of the basement. I intended to leave unnoticed, but Charlotte appeared suddenly in the hallway, her presence immediately causing my pulse to spike again. "You're leaving," she whispered softly, stepping closer in the dim hallway. "Yeah, I should probably get going," I replied, my voice barely audible. She moved even closer, her gaze intense. "Russell, before you go." My heart nearly stopped as she reached out gently, taking my hand in hers. Her fingers felt delicate yet firm, the warmth of her touch sending a jolt of electricity through my entire body. "I know this is complicated," she whispered softly, "but I'm tired of pretending there's nothing here. I want to figure this out with you." I swallowed hard, my emotions swirling rapidly inside me. "Charlotte, I want that too, more than anything." Her eyes softened, relief spreading across her features. She squeezed my hand gently, lingering a moment before slowly letting go. "Okay, we'll talk soon. Drive safe." I nodded silently, every part of me screaming not to leave. But I knew I had to. I stepped out into the night, the cool air filling my lungs. As I walked to my car, my thoughts raced, tangled with excitement, anxiety, and confusion. The reality hit me hard as I sat behind the wheel, staring into the darkness. Charlotte was right. This wasn't simple. It was risky, complicated, and carried the potential to hurt people we both cared about deeply. Yet the pull I felt toward her was undeniable. I drove home slowly, lost in a storm of conflicting emotions. Charlotte's words replayed endlessly in my mind, each one deepening the connection I already felt toward her. I knew without a doubt that we'd crossed a line tonight, one we couldn't easily return from. As I finally lay in bed, unable to sleep, the weight of our shared confession settled heavily within me. My mind spun endlessly with questions. Was it wrong to feel this way? Could we navigate this complicated, dangerous path together? Despite the confusion and fear, one truth remained clear. I couldn't deny my feelings for Charlotte anymore. It wasn't just curiosity or attraction. It was something deeper, more profound, something that felt undeniably real. I knew we were walking into something risky, something that might shatter friendships and family bonds. But even as worry gnawed at me, another feeling grew steadily inside. For the first time in my life, I was ready to face that danger head on. The weeks that followed became a blur of secret meetings and stolen moments with Charlotte. Each encounter was charged with excitement and tenderness, made more intense by the constant threat of discovery. We both knew the risks, understood the consequences clearly. Yet neither of us was willing to let go of what we'd found in each other. Our time together was limited. Quick lunches at quiet cafes, whispered conversations late at night on the phone, or brief moments alone in Charlotte's home when Liam was at school or out with friends. Despite the constraints, those stolen minutes were the sweetest I'd ever experienced. But as our connection deepened, so did my anxiety. Every time I hung out with Liam, the guilt twisted inside me like a sharp blade. I'd known him for years, shared countless memories, laughs, and struggles. The thought of losing that friendship terrified me. Worse still, I feared the betrayal he would inevitably feel if he discovered my relationship with his mother. One chilly Saturday afternoon, Liam invited me over to his house to help him set up a new gaming console. As I arrived, Charlotte greeted me at the door with a careful, polite smile, her eyes guarded but warm. Liam was in the basement, shouting at the TV, too distracted to notice the lingering look Charlotte and I exchanged. Charlotte mouthed a silent, "Be careful." As I descended the stairs, my heart pounded harder with every step. Downstairs, Liam was absorbed in his game, and for a moment things felt normal, almost comfortable. But beneath that normalcy, I knew we were dancing dangerously close to disaster. Later, while Liam disappeared into the kitchen to grab snacks, I quickly glanced at my phone. A message from Charlotte flashed across the screen. "Meet me in the kitchen for a second." My pulse raced as I climbed the stairs, again silently entering the kitchen, to find Charlotte waiting, anxiously leaning against the counter. Without a word, she reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "I just needed to see you, even for a minute," she whispered. Her voice was soft, nervous, yet filled with undeniable warmth. "Me too," I breathed quietly, drawing closer to her. "But this is getting harder, Charlotte. I hate lying to Liam." She nodded slowly, sadness clouding her eyes. "I know I feel it too, but we'll figure it out. I promise." As our conversation continued quietly, neither of us noticed footsteps approaching from behind. Suddenly, we heard Liam's voice, loud and clear, only steps away. "Mom, have you seen?" In an instant, Charlotte and I jumped apart, hearts pounding wildly, fear flooding my veins. She quickly opened the fridge door, pretending to look for something. I turned toward the sink, grabbing a glass, hastily acting like I was just getting some water. Liam appeared in the doorway, glancing casually between us. "Oh, hey, Russ. Didn't hear you come up. What are you guys doing?" "Just grabbing some water," I replied swiftly, holding up the glass with a forced calmness. Charlotte added smoothly, "Looking for something to snack on. Need anything?" Liam shrugged easily, seemingly unaware of the tension crackling in the air. "Nope, I'm good. Just wondered if you saw the extra controller anywhere." Charlotte shook her head calmly. "Check the cabinet downstairs. You probably tossed it there last night." "All right, cool," Liam said lightly, already turning away. "Hurry up, Russ. Game's waiting." He vanished downstairs again, completely oblivious to the near disaster he just walked into. As his footsteps faded, Charlotte and I exchanged a heavy, meaningful glance, both fully aware of how narrowly we'd avoided catastrophe. She exhaled shakily, running a hand through her hair. "That was way too close." "I know," I murmured, guilt and worry gnawing sharply at my heart. Maybe we shouldn't keep doing this. It's too risky. Charlotte stepped closer, looking directly into my eyes, sincerity radiating from her expression. Russell, I can handle this if you can, but I won't blame you if you can't. Whatever you decide, I'll understand. I looked deeply into her eyes, seeing the vulnerability and fear hidden beneath her calm exterior. The feelings we shared had become a vital part of my life, something I wasn't ready to give up. No, I whispered firmly, I'm not ready to lose this. We need a plan. She nodded slowly, agreeing without hesitation. We'll find a way. After that close call, we became even more cautious. Each meeting was carefully planned and executed. Yet with every passing day, the weight of our secret grew heavier. Every moment spent with Liam became an internal battle between the love I felt for Charlotte and the guilt that threatened to crush me. One evening, after another exhausting afternoon spent balancing time between Liam and Charlotte, I found myself unable to sleep. Thoughts raced relentlessly through my mind, pulling me deeper into worry and doubt. I realized with painful clarity that I couldn't continue lying indefinitely. Liam deserved the truth no matter how painful it might be. The following day, I called Charlotte, needing to talk things through. We met at a quiet park away from familiar eyes, walking slowly beneath towering trees. I could see anxiety in her posture, her shoulders tense, her eyes clouded with worry. Charlotte, we have to tell Liam, I said quietly, my voice firm, despite the fear squeezing my chest. Her expression grew troubled, sadness deepening her eyes. Russell, he's going to feel so betrayed. What if this destroys everything, your friendship, his trust in me? I've thought about it every day, I admitted, my heart aching with each word. But the longer we hide, the worse it'll be when he eventually finds out. He deserves honesty even if it hurts. Charlotte stopped walking, turning to face me directly, her eyes shining with unshed tears. You're right, she whispered softly, her voice barely audible. I just don't want to lose either of you. I reached out gently, holding her hands in mine, determination overriding the fear pulsing through my veins. Neither do I, but if we don't face this now, it'll haunt us forever. We owe it to Liam and to ourselves to tell the truth. Charlotte sighed deeply, nodding slowly, resignation settling into her expression. All right, we'll tell him together. No more secrets. As we walked slowly back toward our cars, I felt the heavy weight of the decision we'd made. The sweet secrets we'd shared had brought us undeniable joy, but they'd also bound us tightly in anxiety and guilt. Now standing at the edge of revelation, I understood just how perilous this path had become. I knew telling Liam the truth would change everything forever. But for the first time since our secret had begun, I felt a profound sense of relief amidst the fear. It was finally time to face the consequences, whatever they might be. The days leading up to our decision were the hardest of my life. Charlotte and I both knew the truth couldn't stay hidden forever. Each secretive glance, each stolen touch, had become heavier than we ever imagined. The guilt of betraying Liam's trust gnawed at me day and night, leaving me restless and anxious. On a cool Thursday evening, Charlotte and I met again, this time at a quiet cafe at the edge of town, a place far from familiar faces and the possibility of being overheard. As we sat down at the table, silence lingered between us, both fully aware of the gravity of the conversation we were about to have. Russell, Charlotte finally began, her voice trembling slightly. Are you absolutely sure you want to do this? I looked deeply into her eyes, searching for courage in her gentle gaze. Charlotte, I can't keep living a lie. Liam deserves honesty. We owe it to him and we owe it to ourselves. She sighed softly, reaching across the table to clasp my hand gently. I know you're right, but I'm terrified. Liam is everything to me, and if this goes wrong... Her voice trailed off, emotion overwhelming her. I squeezed her hand reassuringly, sharing her fears. I understand the risks. Believe me, I've thought about every possible outcome. Losing Liam's friendship would break my heart, but hiding this is slowly destroying me. Charlotte nodded slowly, a tear slipping down her cheek. You're braver than I am, Russell. I admire your willingness to face this head on. I smiled faintly, trying to project confidence I barely felt. We'll face it together. We've come this far. We can't turn back now. Charlotte wiped her eyes in straightened determination, returning to her expression. Then it's settled. We'll tell him tomorrow. I spent that night awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every possible scenario in my head. How would Liam react? Would he scream in anger, lash out at me, or worse, never speak to me again? The uncertainty was torturous, but deep down, I knew that no matter how painful this was, the right thing to do. The following afternoon, I texted Liam telling him I needed to come over. He responded casually, unaware of the seriousness of the visit. As I parked my car in front of their house, anxiety tightened like a vice around my chest. My heart hammered painfully, each step toward the front door feeling heavier than the last. Charlotte opened the door quietly, her eyes filled with worry. "Liam's upstairs," she whispered, her voice shaking slightly. "Russell, whatever happens, please know this. I've never regretted us." I touched her arm gently, needing the comfort of her warmth one last time before everything potentially changed. "Me neither. Whatever happens, we'll face it." I climbed the stairs slowly, each creaking step echoing in my ears. I reached Liam's bedroom door and paused, my hand raised ready to knock, yet unable to move. The weight of this moment pressed down on me like never before. I took a deep breath, fighting the panic rising in my chest. My thoughts were tangled images of our friendship moments, spent laughing years of memories. But amid that confusion, a single undeniable truth shone through honesty was the only path forward. Finally, I knocked softly on Liam's door. "Come in," Liam called from inside, his voice casual and unsuspecting. I pushed open the door slowly, heart thundering in my chest. Liam glanced up from his laptop, smiling easily. "Hey, Russ, what's up? You look kind of serious." I hesitated briefly, then closed the door behind me, trying to steady my trembling hands. "We need to talk," I said quietly, my voice thick with emotion. Liam's expression shifted immediately, becoming serious. He closed his laptop, turning to face me fully. "What's going on, Russell? You're starting to worry me." I struggled to find the right words, each one feeling inadequate. "Liam, there is something important I need to tell you. It's not easy, and I hope you'll try to understand." He narrowed his eyes slightly, confusion and concern clouding his features. "Okay, man. You know you can tell me anything. What's this about?" My throat felt dry, my chest tight with dread. Every word was a struggle. "It's about your mom and me." His expression changed instantly. First surprise, then confusion, and finally something approaching alarm. "My mom, what are you talking about?" I swallowed hard, heart pounding painfully. "Liam, over the last few months, Charlotte and we've become close, closer than either of us ever planned." The silence that followed was deafening. Liam stared at me, disbelief etched clearly on his face. "Wait, are you saying you and my mom?" I nodded slowly, my voice barely a whisper. "Yeah, we've been seeing each other." Liam rose abruptly from his chair, pacing the room, his hands running through his hair in agitation. "You and my mom, Russell. She's my mom. You're my best friend. How could you even think that's okay?" "I know," I admitted, painfully, guilt washing over me in waves. "I never planned this, Liam. I never intended to hurt you. It just happened. And once it did, I couldn't ignore it." Liam stopped pacing, turning sharply to face me, hurt blazing in his eyes. "And so you lied to me, both of you. How long has this been going on?" "A few months," I admitted quietly, the weight of my confession nearly crushing me. "We wanted to tell you sooner, but we were terrified you'd react exactly like this." Liam's shoulders slumped, at anger giving way to confusion and pain. "Do you love her?" he asked, his voice barely audible. I met his gaze steadily, knowing this was the moment I had to be completely honest. "Yes, Liam, I love her." He stared at me, emotions churning visibly behind his eyes. Silence stretched endlessly between us. I could feel the foundation of our friendship shaking, threatening to collapse beneath the weight of my admission. Finally, Liam turned away, his voice flat, empty. "I need time, Russell. I don't even know how to process this." "I understand," I whispered. "Take all the time you need." I left his room, my heart heavier than ever before. Standing in the hallway, I caught sight of Charlotte waiting anxiously at the bottom of the stairs, eyes filled with questions and fears. I offered her a weak, reassuring nod, but inside uncertainty tore at my soul. As I stood there, I realized the true value of honesty and love. This decision had cost me the comfort of secrecy, the ease of pretending, but it had given me clarity, a chance at something genuine, even if painful. Behind me, the door to Liam's room slowly opened again. I turned back, meeting Liam's eyes filled with conflict, hurt, and perhaps the faintest glimmer of understanding. And at that moment, standing on the edge of uncertainty, the next chapter of my life began. In Russell's story, a seemingly innocent visit spirals into a whirlwind of forbidden attraction and heart-wrenching choices, teaching us a profound lesson. True love demands courage and honesty, even when it risks shattering the foundations of our closest relationships. At 23, Russell's impulsive nature draws him into an unexpected connection with Charlotte, his best friend Liam's mother, whose vulnerability and warmth awaken feelings he never anticipated. What begins as a casual encounter evolves into stolen moments of genuine intimacy, but the secrecy breeds guilt and anxiety, forcing Russell to confront the painful reality that hiding emotions only amplifies their destructive power. The near-miss discoveries and eventual confession to Liam highlight the emotional toll of betrayal, how love when pursued without transparency can erode trust and leave lasting scars. Yet Russell's decision to face the truth despite the fear of losing his friendship reminds us that integrity is the ultimate act of self-respect. It's a gut-punch realization we've all grappled with desires that clash with loyalty, wondering if the heart's pull is worth the fallout. This tale urges us to embrace vulnerability early or to communicate openly before secrets poison what we hold dear. In the end, Russell's journey shows that while love can complicate life beyond measure, owning our choices leads to growth even in heartbreak, proving that the hardest paths often yield the most authentic freedom. If Russell's emotional turmoil resonated with you, or if you've ever navigated a forbidden connection that tested your bonds, drop your story in the comments. What's the toughest truth you have had to confess? Your experiences could spark hope for others. For more gripping tales of love, loyalty, and life's raw twists, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications. Join our community where hearts collide and lessons unfold. Let's explore these stories together.